I like roasting the bones when I make a bone broth only because it gives it another layer of deepness and flavor. I love it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You can just start this from the, you know, throwing everything in the pot and letting it simmer. If you have time and you can, I highly recommend this step because it'll take your bone broth to another level. As you can see, I have an oven-proof pan that I'm going to make everything in. If you don't, go ahead and put your bones in a roasting pan and then we're going to transfer them to a pot onto the stove. Please make sure that the pot you're using is oven-proof. You don't want to have, you know, plastic handles melting and stuff in there. Just make sure if you're going to use a pot that it is oven-proof. You can use any bones you want for bone broth. I am using obviously beef here. You can use lamb, you can use chicken, you can use fish bones and heads, you know. Just make sure that it has a bone. You know. In here I have 2 very large Costco size short ribs, which I'm going to use today. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in here. This is a lot of fat, but we will defat our bone broth before we eat it. And I'm going to put salt on it. So this is gonna go into an oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 200 degrees centigrade or Celsius for about 30-35 minutes until the onion is nicely charred and the bones are nicely roasted. So our onion and bones have been roasting for about 40-45 minutes. I am going to very carefully, this is very hot as you can imagine, I'm going to very carefully discard as much of that fat as I can. If you haven't subbed, please do so. Turn on your notification button so you know when there's new recipes, and thank you for that. Almost half a cup of fat. All right, now we're going to scrape all those beautiful brown bits from the bottom. You can already see that beautiful goodness in our broth. It's nice and brown. You can give your bone broth the flavor profile that you want. It's a great opportunity, by the way, to use little pieces of vegetables that you might have left over inside your fridge. Perfect. Throw them into the pot. But today we're gonna go a little Asian. If you wanted it to be more Latino, let's say, you can use coriander seed, you can use cumin seed. I sometimes throw chilies in there, like, you know, guajillo and chipotle, dried chilies, and just let them simmer, whatever you want. So I'm gonna add a whole jalapeno, which I simply cut in half. As always, optional. I'm gonna put some bell pepper in there, some celery. I smashed some big pieces of ginger. I peeled them and smashed them. I happen to have turmeric in my refrigerator, so I just washed it and smashed it. I have some thyme. I have maybe 4 garlic cloves, which I smashed. I have some peppercorns. I'm gonna put 4 star anise in there. I'm gonna put 3 bay leaves. And let's call this, these little skinny cinnamon sticks, half a stick of cinnamon. That's what's going in my pot. I am going to salt this. And we are going to bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, and let it simmer slowly. Don't touch it, don't look at it, no, until it's nicely reduced. This broth simmered for 10 hours. Look how much liquid we lost. It is super concentrated. We're gonna wait for this to cool down completely. I'm gonna remove the ribs and eat them, obviously. And then I am going to strain everything else out of the liquid. Okay guys, here is our bone broth. You can see how the fat is starting. Can you see that? The fat is starting to separate from the broth. I'm gonna cool these down completely, put them in the refrigerator, and then this is gonna become a solid mass. And all I'm gonna do is remove it with a spoon or a fork or whatever, throw it in the garbage can, and I have this beautiful broth. Our bone broth has been in the fridge all night. See how that fat is now solid on top of the broth? Now we're gonna remove that. This is hard, so you can use a fork, a spoon, a knife, whatever. It's not going to disintegrate in there. Now I'm just gonna throw this in the garbage and we're done. I suppose you could use this to cook if you wanted to. I don't know, I'm just gonna throw it away. Can you see how gelatinous that is? And that's because of the collagen from the bone. I try and have bone broth every day. I don't always, but I do try. And I'll do it instead of a meal. Let's say instead of dinner, I'll have a cup of broth. That way I can go to bed and don't feel super heavy. And yeah, it's good for me. Oh, it's loaded in flavor. Loaded in flavor. I will use this many times to cook recipes that need beef stock, and I do freeze whatever I'm not gonna use. So I always have some in the freezer.